Gavin.
Boss.
How are you?
Oh, killing it. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
So this week, this coming Sunday, we're doing an Instructed Eucharist.
Yeah, we are.
We can talk about that in a little bit, but first off,
Mhm.
what is the Eucharist?
Good question. What is the Eucharist? The word itself, Eucharisto, means thankfulness, thanksgiving, giving thanks kind of thing. But it is the meal that we partake in. It's the feast that we partake in that is the reality of Jesus Christ, that Jesus is actually present with us in the feast that we make and do together.
So you say Jesus is present.
Yeah.
And normally this whole video series is what do Christians think about?
Sure.
And this is a thing where there are some very strong things that Christians think.
Yeah.
You say present.
Yeah, go for it.
Is Jesus up there on that table? Like physically, what do you mean by present?
So I guess what do Christians think about the Eucharist? Again, that is a lot of different answers. So we are, as Anglicans, as Episcopalians, we're on the middle path of via media, right? So the Catholic transubstantiation, right, where it's put this under a microscope, it's going to be Jesus' DNA. Like it's actually becoming very physically the body and blood of Jesus Christ. That's not something that the Anglican communion, Anglican theology says is like where we plant our flag. But in the same way, because we're kind of walking this line, right, between fully Catholic, fully Reformed, it's not just a memorial meal either. It's not just like Jesus said to do this thing and we're doing this nice thing together. That's not where we plant our flag either. We're kind of in the middle where we say somehow, some way, Jesus is actually present, whether that's a spiritual reality, whether that is whatever. Somehow, some way, Jesus is actually present. To us, with us, in this meal.
Yeah.
Right.
I think in the pews, you're going to have folks that believe it's literal body and blood transubstantiation. It's one of the reasons we have such reverence for it. And we light the candle and we do all these things. You're going to have other people that think, oh, it's just a meal that I'm having with my friends. All that's valid.
Sure.
We line up. One of the gifts of our tradition is that we allow for that difference. When I grew up Lutheran, and one of the things I learned in my Lutheran confirmation, which was 3 years long, by the way, it was just as long as seminary.
Wow.
Yeah. So middle schoolers, high schoolers at St. Martin's, get ready. We're switching to a 3-year. No, we're not.
Yeah, we are.
I learned about consubstantiation.
Yeah,
this is the idea, and Luther talks about in the Eucharist and the Lord's Supper, Jesus is present in, with, and under the elements. It's different from the elements transforming into the microscope, like you talked about. Yeah. The bread becomes flesh. But the somehow, some way.
Yeah.
Our liturgy professor in seminary, Dr. Farwell, would talk about it. By the end of the meal, somehow the bread becomes bread plus.
Yes.
We don't know what the plus is.
Yeah.
Somehow the wine becomes wine plus.
Yeah.
There's something different about it.
Yeah.
We don't have definitive answers about what it is.
Yep.
But it is different.
It is different. And that's one of the things. There's a reason that in our liturgy, it's not, we talk about it like liturgy of the word, liturgy of the table, but really it's all one, right? And there's a reason that at least half, if not more, of our service is spent liturgy of the table, right? Because we recognize that it's the most important thing it could be. Like you and I preaching, you, me, Io, Tony preaching, that is not the crux of the service.
Thank God.
I mean, truly. Plus we only have to preach for 12 minutes. So that's kind of nice. But the reason that we do the same thing week after week after week, where we stand up at the altar, we, with the congregation, make the Eucharist, right? And that's something that we cannot do alone. It has to be within the body of believers. That's another fairly Anglican thing. We believe that this is the most important thing it could be. And that's why we do it every week. That's why we do it together. That's why we do it as much as we do. When we were in seminary, we were having Eucharist every day, and it's funny now, like I'll go, week to week, and that like I will take Eucharist on Sunday. I will, and then, but before it was like, man, this is every day. It was great. And then I guess one of the other things that I want to talk about is like, because we believe it actually is somehow, some way, the body and blood of Jesus Christ, you will see if there's ever a point where Alan or I hand you the host and it gets dropped on the floor, Alan and I will bend over and take it, because we're like, nope, that is the body of Jesus Christ. It needs to be intaken. We're not going to expect you to do that, right? But we will bend over and take it. There was a funny point where I was at a friend's ordination, and this was in a northern state that I won't mention, but there was a bishop there who was giving the Eucharist, and I think he was a retired bishop, and I was like the first or second person up to take, and he hands me the wafer, and it slips out of his hand and falls on the ground, and he's a aged man, and he looks at me and he looks at the ground, and I reach over and I take it, because he was like, I'm not bending over to do that. So that was that. So.
Yeah. And the way we handle, no matter what we believe about it, we do handle the elements with honor and respect. It's why, you'll see at St. Martin's a lot of times, if it's not much wine, the celebrant usually just finishes it off.
Yep.
Sometimes the acolytes will take it in the back. When they go back there, they're not pouring it down the sink. They're either consuming it, or, as sometimes the case is, we've poured a lot of wine and consecrated a lot of wine. And even if all the acolytes share in it, it's probably not the wisest thing.
Yeah.
So we'll go out to the memorial garden and we pour it into consecrated ground. It doesn't go into the sewer. It goes directly into the ground if it's not consumed. Because we don't know what it is. Yeah. Right. And there's also, we'll talk more about this on Sunday, there's no point in the service where it magically becomes something else.
Yes.
There's points where bells ring. There's points where we make crosses over things. There's points where we elevate things. Yeah. None of those are magic.
Yes.
Because nothing that happens in the Eucharist is magic.
Yeah.
It's the sum total of it, right? The Eucharist can't happen without the gospel being read.
Yes.
The Eucharist can't happen without the prayers of the people.
Yeah.
The Eucharist can't happen without all the other stuff that led up to it.
Yeah.
And so those pieces are every bit as magic as when we put our hands over something.
Yeah.
So we'll get into more of that on Sunday.
Yeah, we will.
What else? What's an instructed Eucharist? What are we doing quickly?
Yeah, so we are going to kind of hit pause at certain points in the liturgy. We're going to do the liturgy like normal, maybe an abbreviated, a truncated, or even no sermon. But it's going to look like, we process in, we collect of the day, do the readings, and then one of us will say pause. And then we'll explain collect of the day, we'll explain the 4 readings that we do, we'll explain why we're reading from each section of the scriptures, and then we'll talk about what's coming next. That'll come next, then we'll talk about that, and kind of so on and so forth. And I think last time we invited like all the kids to come up and watch. I'm sure that we'll do that again, which will be great.
You're probably too young for this, but there was a show that was my favorite show called Saved by the Bell.
Oh, yeah, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, and so Zach Morris, throughout those episodes, sometimes he would say, "Time out," and he would turn and talk to the camera.
Yeah.
And so I get to live my Mark Paul Gosselaar, Zach Morris dream, and I get to say, "Time out," and speak directly to the camera.
That's going to be great. That's going to be great.
And so that's the 10:30 service for you 8:30 folks. We'll do some talking a little bit. It won't be quite as big as the 10:30. But I hope you join us. I hope you watch it online to learn more about the Eucharist. Yeah. And we solved another problem. We now know definitively what we think about the Eucharist.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nailed it.